Antoinette Griffin is an executive coach, and her topic for today is when interviewing, practice the platinum rule for greater success. And let me give you just another reminder of what her background is. She is an executive coach, speaker, trainer, and facilitator. Her company, Griff Development, provides coaching for business professionals to excel in leadership, business building, confidence and communication, and goal achievement. She also specializes in working with introverts. I believe most of us are introverts. Additional current professional experience includes she was the executive director and faculty member of John Maxwell team, providing training and support for over 35,000 coaches. Coaching the coaches. She is also an instructor at the University of Texas Center for Professional Education, a graduate of UT with a degree in management. She's a DISC certified human behavior consultant. She currently resides in Atlanta with her husband and business partner, John. With no more delay, welcome again to Antoinette Griffin.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you, Shannon, for having me back. So we're going to talk about the platinum rule when interviewing, because we've all been there in those situations. We've all been there where we were qualified for the job. We answered the questions really well. We were confident. We conducted ourselves well, and we either thought the interview went really good and we didn't get the job and we're not quite sure why. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes there was somebody better qualified, but sometimes there just was something there that we couldn't put our finger on. Or sometimes you walk out of the room feeling that way. You leave the building or you leave the virtual interview going, it just didn't feel like we connected and I couldn't put my finger on it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how you can better identify your different communication style, the way that you're naturally wired, and how you can best connect with your interviewer to really connect with them, how to identify their communication style. Now, you're going to be able to apply this with HR professionals. You're going to be able to apply this in networking meetings that you go to virtually and in person. But I'm going to, for purposes today and examples, I'm going to be talking about it like from the standpoint of the person who is interviewing you. So let's go ahead and get started here. Okay. So like I said, you're going to learn about the way your naturally wired style, a little bit more about that, how you can identify other styles without even really having known this person before you go in for an interview, and how to adapt your style. So the golden rule, we all know about something called the golden rule. So what is the golden rule? When you think about the golden rule, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. What's the golden rule? I'm going to try to get back to chat. Yes, go ahead.
Do you want others as you would have them do unto you?
Exactly, or treat others the way that you want to be treated. We all know the golden rule. It's something that we've all learned. But today, when it comes to communication, we're going to talk about the platinum rule. because the golden rule to communicate with others the way you want to be communicated with doesn't always work. And you've probably realized this before. So we're going to talk about the platinum rule, and that is how to communicate with others the way they want to be communicated with. So before we get started with this, I want to go ahead and ask you all to look at this picture. And what is this? So when you're looking at this picture, what is this? What do you see? Trying to go back to, for some reason, I can't see chat.
I see Africa.
There's chat. Okay, you see Africa. Okay, anybody else?
In the chat, it says a slide of skin cells.
A slide of skin cells. I like
One-
y'all's thought processes.
One says a bad Xerox.
Does anybody see a cow? A cow. Let's go. Look, there's the nose of the cow. There's the head. Do you see it? There is the cow. Now, when you go back and you look at it without those, you see the cow, right? It's kind of like that whole Xerox, the FedEx logo. Once you see the arrow in the FedEx logo, you can't look at the FedEx logo without seeing the arrow. So knowing that when you look at this now, you know to see a cat, that there's a cow there and you can't not see it. Let me do another one. How many animals do you see in this picture?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Was that you, Kathy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was muted. I think I see 8 or 9.
Okay, you all see more than one animal, because I already told you, but by looking at the first thing, I already have you thinking now that, okay, there's things that are hidden there. And yes, there is. There's the other animals in the mountain. Okay, so why did we do that experiment? Why did we do that? We did that because I'm going to show you how to identify different communication styles in people, because people are different, but people are predictably different. Now, are you going to get this right 100% of the time? No, you're not going to get this right 100% of the time, but you're going to have tools to be able to walk out of here with today to better be able to predict how someone prefers to be communicated with. So not 100% of the time, but it's still going to work. Now, this is not to put anybody in a box. It's not to put you in a box, nor is it to put the people that are interviewing you in a box. But what it is going to do is it's going to get you out of your box by realizing that, you know what? There are other communication styles out there, and not everybody's communicating like me. And we all know that, but this is going to make you more conscious of it and aware of how to identify it. So, as Kathy told you, I'm DISC certified. So we're going to be talking some about the DISC styles. And we're going to just do a quick identification on what your primary style may be. Now, you haven't taken a DISC assessment, or at least you haven't for this call, for purposes of this call, but like I said, you'll be able to kind of get an idea of what your DISC style is. So first of all, and it's good if you can write this down, but if you can't, it's okay. But if you can take notes on this, this will help you. So when you think about yourself, do you think about yourself being more people-oriented, or do you think about yourself being more task-oriented? Now, I know some of you are going to go, oh, well, of course I'm people-oriented. I like people. Well, that just kind of back up, because you still may not be people-oriented when it comes down to it. So I'm going to give you a couple questions on how to better answer this question. Is your idea of a perfect day about the things that you're going to get done or the conversations that you're going to have? Like, for instance, I'm a friendly, personable person, but I'm a task-oriented person. I like my to-do list, just like here on the screen. I like getting everything done that I need to get done for the day. And when it comes down to having conversations with people or getting my stuff done, I'm going to always first immediately go to the task. So I am more task oriented. Or are you the kind of person that feels like, well, I'm going to get my stuff done, but I want to be able to linger in conversations. I want to be able to establish those relationships. And if a conversation lasts a little bit longer than I had thought it would, it is okay. I'm going to still get my stuff done. Then you were probably people oriented. So here's another question for you. In a traditional work environment, do you go straight to your office or do you like to visit with others? So if you go straight to your office, you're probably a task-oriented person like me. But if you like to just kind of walk slowly through the office and have those conversations, you're probably more people-oriented. Now, if you're not sure which you are, just pick one because you probably have more of a bent of one of those than the other. So people-oriented versus task-oriented. Okay, everybody got it? And what all did you say? What all did y'all want to hear what some people have said they are? People, Kathy's people. Cedar is task, Lisa, task, John, task, Ruth, people. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so now that you've got that, I want you to think about yourself in this way. Do you tend to be more reserved or outgoing? And you probably know this one. This one's pretty easy, but think about it this way. When you go into an office building and you get on the elevator and the elevator opens, are you happy when there's nobody in the elevator so that you can just be by yourself? You don't have to talk to anybody. You really are glad. Or do you get in the elevator and you are so excited that there's other people in the elevator because either you can talk to the person and make conversation or you can get a question answered. You see somebody that you know and you're like, oh, this is great. I can immediately tell them what I need to tell them. And so you're happy when there's people in the elevator. Your motor tends to run at kind of a faster pace versus more of a reserved pace, your internal motor. Another question to help determine this is, do you think to speak? In other words, do you like to think about what you're going to say silently in your head, or do you like to verbalize your thoughts out loud? And they may not be your final thoughts, but you like to get them out there verbally. So what are you all answering there? Outgoing, Lisa. Randy is reserved. Julian outgoing. Jenny outgoing. Clarice reserved. Okay. Thank you. Aiden says, what if I both think to speak and I speak to think, depending on the situation? Very good. Once again, think about your bent, what you would do in most situations. What do you have more of a bent towards? Because a lot of you, we're going to identify your primary disc style, but most of you are a blend of different styles depending on the situation, just like Aiden said. So let's go ahead and talk about which style you might be. So if you are more people-oriented, then you're over here on the right. If you're more task-oriented, you're over here on the left. And if you're more outgoing, you're up there on the top. If you're more reserved, you're down there on the bottom. So let's go through this. If you are outgoing and people-oriented, then your DISC style, for purposes of this, just generally, would be an I. That's the influencer, the inspiring person, the very outgoing, people-oriented, not shy kind of person. If you are outgoing but task-oriented, then your DISC style could very well be a D. That's the dominant driver. Let's get stuff done. And if you are more reserved and task-oriented, then your DISC style could be the C, which is the cautious, compliant person. And if you're more people-oriented and reserved, then your DISC style could be the S, which is the stable, secure person that likes to be behind the scenes. So let's talk about these styles. So what does this look like in an interview? Thinking about your own style. So for those of you that are the D style, you're outgoing and you're task-oriented. This is the dominant style, the take charge style. So some of the characteristics that might describe you would be dominant, confident, can also be overbearing, and able to think on their feet. So what does this look like in an interview? The D style, which is great for interviews, goes into interviews probably very confident. And even if they are nervous or feeling a little bit insecure, it probably is not showing because your style, it comes across as very confident. Somebody asks you a question in an interview and you're probably able to answer that question immediately. You don't even have to think about it. Now, it may not be your final answer, but you're able to think of an answer immediately. The D style usually likes to talk. And so you probably in an interview situation are very talkative in an interview. And in situations with some people, it can actually be almost overwhelming or overbearing. Now, keep in mind that if you're a D style and if you're whatever style that you identified yourself with, if you're saying, well, some of that's like me, but other parts is not like me, that's okay. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means, number one, how intense are you with that style? And number two, in what situations are you that style? So for instance, in an interview situation, you might not be any of these because it's a completely different situation, but to just be aware of how we're normally coming across. So once again, this is not 100% right because you haven't taken an assessment, but it's going to give you a better idea of how you're coming across. Okay, now let's go on to the I style. This is the people-oriented, outgoing person. This is the person who, like I said, does not know a stranger. Very friendly, very talkative. In fact, talking so much that they may ramble. And normally not detail-oriented, more kind of the high-level kind of person, but not really getting into the details. The I style can tend to also get off the subject because the I style is always on to the next thing. Like I said, they're very big thinkers and very spontaneous and like a lot of change. If you are an I style and you look back to your past employment history and you go, wow, I've had a lot of jobs and you can identify with the I style, then it could be because that's your naturally wired style. You like a lot of change. That's just who you are. So what does this look like in an interview? You probably are very likable as a person because you're able to make conversations with strangers very easily. But what could be the downside in an interview is the interviewer asks you a question and you might keep talking longer than they would like. Or you're rambling and get off the subject and you're going off on this rabbit trail. and they either bring you back very abruptly, or they don't know how to bring you back and they let you continue to go on. So just being aware of these things and how they can come across in an interview. Okay, next we're moving on to the reserved and people-oriented style. This is the S style. This is 69% of the population. So there are a lot of the S's out there in the general population. Now, some industries don't have a lot of S's. For instance, a high-tech industry, the reserved and people-oriented. High-tech industries, most of the people who are engineers, who are in any kind of technical role, tend to be more task-oriented than people-oriented. But there's other industries out there that are huge with S's, such as healthcare, such as education, such as counseling. So a lot of these depend on the industry as well. But overall, general population, the S is 69% of the population. The S's tend to be more quiet, huge team players, very supportive, tend to be more reactive rather than taking the initiative, but very helpful people. So what does this look like in an interview? The S is probably going to be more reserved in the interview, not take the initiative, but wait until asked certain questions. But their strength is being able to show how they're that supportive team player, because most likely in the past, in any kind of work environment, if you are a solid S, then you can point to really being supportive in a team environment, which can be great in an interview. So keeping in mind for the S after the interview, taking the initiative as far as following up, and I'm sure that y'all have heard plenty of presentations about how to follow up after an interview, to not be aggressive or be a pest, but to at least let the person know that you're interested in the job, and to follow up during the process. I know with one interview that I had done years ago with a salesperson that I really wanted to hire, it kind of bugged me that he never followed up to say, hey, I just want to let you know I was very interested in the job, which he was, because later I did end up hiring him. And I actually told him, I said, in your future jobs, you probably want to take the initiative more. Well, he's that S style. So he did not feel comfortable taking the initiative. Next is the reserved and task-oriented style, which is the C style. This is the compliant, cautious style. Can come across very serious, very logical because they're task-oriented, very organized, and very detail-oriented. And so what does this look like in an interview? The thing, if you identified with the S, that the thing that you want to keep in mind is sometimes, and I talked about this during my last presentation at Launchpad, and that is watch your facial expressions, watch how you're coming across, because you want to be identifiable. And the C style is reserved and task-oriented, so that can make them seem like they don't want to connect with people. So remembering, hey, how's my facial expression on this virtual interview? And how is my body language coming across where I'm showing that I really want to connect with this team of people? Because you want them to feel comfortable around you. And then also the organization, of course, is wonderful. Detail-oriented, the thing to realize here is just make sure and not get so much into the details. So for instance, if an interviewer is asking you a question, you may want to give them all the details of the answer, and knowing that if they don't have this same style, they probably aren't going to want to hear all my details. So those are the 4 styles. Now we're going to go straight to what does this look like in an interview from the interviewer standpoint. So we're going to flip it here. So you know your style. And like I said, I'm just reiterating, if you could only identify with certain things, and you may have seen yourself, well, I see myself as a little bit of I and a little bit of S. I see myself as both. And it's very likely that you're a blend of those 2 styles. Some people have a blend of 3 styles. So you're likely more than just one style. What does this look like in an interview from the interviewer standpoint? So what I want you to do now is keep in mind the style that you identified with and how you may be coming across. Task-oriented versus people-oriented, reserved versus outgoing. Okay, what if your interviewer, the person interviewing you, is outgoing and task-oriented? They're that D style. Well, if you're a D style, then you pretty much kind of understand how they're going to react and what their naturally wired style is. But how do you identify somebody who is a D style? Well, first of all, remember I said that person is a dominant driver, task-oriented. The D style interviewer does not want to waste time. They want to get stuff done. They want to get to the point. And they're very efficient. They're very confident, like we talked about before, and very efficient. So what this looks like is if you go into the interview and you start talking about a lot of things that don't have to do with their question, then they're likely to get irritated. And sometimes the D will bring you back to the point because they're very outgoing as far as they'll say what they think. You may not be able to catch it, but they'll bring you back to the point. But they want you to get to the point. So if you do tend to ramble or you do tend to get it too much into details, that can be a sore spot for them. They like control. And so remember, we talked about how the Ds like to talk. And so let them talk. You never want to interrupt a D. So if you're interviewing with a D and the D is talking about something, they want to have the control of the floor. And so you do not want to interrupt the D. They can come across as intimidating. Have you ever been in an interview where you're like, ooh, that person kind of intimidated me and I just can't put my finger on it? They don't mean to be intimidating. That's just their style. But if you identified with the S, then it's likely you've been in interviews where you've felt that kind of intimidation before, because you do tend to be more reserved and people-oriented. So the people that are the really outgoing, task-oriented can come across as intimidating. The great thing about the Ds are they decide quickly. So they're probably not going to sit on an applicant situation for a long time if it's left up to them. Now, I know a lot of times they have to wait on HR, they have to wait on their manager. But when it comes to making a decision, they're going to make a decision pretty quickly. And so also know that when you're in that interview, you want to step it up, show your best self quickly, because they're going to probably make the decision quickly about you in an interview as well, as far as those first impressions. So that is the D interviewing style. So how would you be able to tell before you met someone if they were this style? Some of the things you could look for is, have they sent you emails, and are their emails very brief and to the point? Have you had a phone conversation with them and they're not shooting the breeze with you? But they're pretty much getting to the point. Are they saying, hey, would like for you to come into an interview at this date, this time, this is what you need to bring, or, they're just all about the facts and they're keeping it very brief. Likely that person is a D style, but you can tell a little bit more about that whenever you're in the room and you're gauging what is their communication style. What if your interviewer is the I? Remember, this is that people-oriented, outgoing style. This person as an interviewer, you're going to go, oh my gosh, he or she was so nice because they're so friendly. They talk to you like they've known you forever, which is always comforting. Now, they always also like to talk. And so know that you may go in this interview going, wow, I didn't really get to talk that much, because they like to talk. They may ask you a question and you start to answer it, and then they go off telling you a story about themselves. But that's their naturally wired style. And so let them talk. They can get off the subject, just like we talked about. Those of you who are I's, you have to be careful about getting off the subject. These I interviewers may go down a trail that you're thinking, why in the world are they telling me this during an interview? My husband's got I in him. And when we used to interview people, I would say, how'd the interview go? And he'd say, it was great. It lasted 2 hours. And I'd say, okay, well, did you find this and this and this about her? And he's like, no, but we had a really good talk. And I would go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're not finding out these things in the interview. But that's the I style. They really like that relationship and they love to talk. Now, here's one thing to be aware of. The I's can overpromise. So you may walk out of an interview with an I feeling like that I got the job. This went so great. Because they can tend to make everything seem positive, because they are very positive people. And it's not that they mean to deceive you. It's just that they can talk in such ways that will make you think that everything's great and the job is yours. And then later you're shocked to find out it's not. My husband used to, be very favorable towards people. And I would be thinking, why are you being so favorable towards this person when we know that we're not going to hire him? He wasn't doing it to deceive him. He was just he's a nice guy. So be aware of that. The S style. This is the reserved, people-oriented person. If someone is interviewing you and they're the S style, they're going to be, once again, this nice, very reserved, kind of quiet person, soft-spoken, and they're going to be slower to act. So you may think that they're getting ready to make a decision, and maybe their deadline is coming up to make a decision on the job, but they may take forever. And you're thinking, what is taking so long? It's because they're very slow to pull the trigger. And keep this in mind. They do not like confrontation. So remember how I said before that the S style, if you're the S style, you want to take more initiative in following up after the interview. If you're the D or the I style, make sure that after the interview, you are not pushing somebody who's an S style for a decision, because they're going to take that as they're being aggressive with me. They're being pushy. They're trying to push me in a corner, to give them an answer. And they don't like that. So they would consider that as confrontation. Which they have difficulty saying no. So know that as well, that even when you're trying to get a yes or no from them, sometimes it's really difficult for them to say no, because that's just their style. They're very nice people. They're very team oriented, and they don't like to tell people no. So how would you identify this style? if the person seems had to have this caring tone in their phone conversations, to have more of a conversational tone in emails, and then you're going into the interview and you've noticed that, yeah, it's conversational tone, but they tend to be more quiet and reserved, then they're likely this S style. And remember, 69% of the population is an S style. What if your interviewer is a C style? This is the reserved and task-oriented style, very detail-oriented. So they are going to notice if you've got typos on your resume, they're going to notice. I am the C style, so I can speak to this one from personal experience. Somebody has a typo on their resume, I am going to notice. Somebody has any kind of gaps on their resume, then I'm going to notice and I'm going to ask them about that. So very, very detail oriented. And I can get into giving too much detail. So remember, the C style can tend to do that. So once again, you're an interviewer with a C and they're getting into all this detail and you're wondering why. It's because that's the way that they think. Very logical. So facts versus emotions. Remember, I said they're serious, so they can come across like, oh my gosh, they don't like me. They seem so serious in the interview. They didn't seem very personable. They may think you are fantastic, but you won't know it because they can tend to be very serious and not give any emotions away. They can be very over analytical. So they might start grilling you with questions and you might think, oh my gosh, something's wrong here because they keep asking me questions about this specific thing. But it's because, once again, they're very detail oriented and trying to get into analyzing how they're taking your answer. They have very high expectations and a very high expectations for quality. And so know that, when they're going to tell you, hey, this is what the job entails, they're probably not going to leave anything out. So it's not going to be one of those things where you go into the job going, oh, well, I didn't know about this. They're going to probably give you not only the details, but actually what is expected of you. And if you end up working for a C, they're going to have really high expectations of you as well. So I went through the 4 different styles that you may be, and I went through the 4 different styles that your interviewer may be. So before I go back into the next slides, I want to find out from you all, any questions that you have regarding these styles. And you can either unmute yourself or you can type them in the chat. And it looks like there was a lot of chat going on that I didn't notice there. But Kathy, if you can help me out, if there's any questions in the chat.
Bethany has, Julie says, I was in an interview with a CEO, a COO, and a VP of HR. The CEO was over the top excited, but the other 2 were inquisitive but more reserved. How do you figure out that balance? And then Bethany gave her advice, which is, so whatever personality type gives advice, Bethany stepped up and gave advice. I'd give short, clear answers to the COO and the VP, but let the CEO drive the atmosphere with his chattiness and listen to his stories as long as the other 2 let him go. The COO and VP should be used to their CEO and be able to manage him.
Bethany, thank you, Kathy. Bethany, I love that answer. So Bethany, either you are a master at DISC or you have worked in an environment like this. It's interesting. One of our company clients that we worked with, the CEO was just that. Oh my gosh, he loved, everybody else, the leadership team would be talking about one thing and he would walk in the room and just derail it and start getting into all these stories. But you're exactly right. The other ones knew how to react to him. So I love your answer, Bethany. I don't have anything to cap on that because you did
Bethany says she's military. So she
Oh.
completely, I don't know if she's had training in how to read people or if it comes naturally or if it comes from being in that environment, but she credits military with that ability.
That is fantastic. That is fantastic. Yeah. So no, and if any other questions come up, just feel free to type those in the chat or unmute yourself. But like I said, most people are a blend of different styles. And here is the interesting thing: is people are usually different styles at their core and under a stressful situation. So let me talk a little bit about that. And Kathy, if you can just keep an eye out on the chat so that if some more come up on that. Sometimes people will say, well, I am the way that I am. I'm the way that I'm naturally wired. Why should I have to adapt my communication style? Well, do you want to connect? Do you want to have the other person feel like that they can relate to you more? Now, some of you may be thinking, well, I don't really, because what if I get the job? Am I having to be someone who I'm not? It doesn't mean that at all. It still means you're your naturally wired style. But when you are connecting with different people, once you do start working there, you're going to have better relationships, knowing what's their hot buttons. So like, for instance, I'm that detail-oriented analytical person. But there's clients that I have that are very D-wired. So they don't want all my detail. They don't want me to go into all of this stuff. They want to talk and they want to keep it at high level. And they want me to speak quicker than I would like to. But I know that for me to connect with them, I need to adapt to their style. John Maxwell says connecting increases your influence in every situation. So you're not just laying down going, okay, I'm giving up who I am. You're going to get more influence because people are going to feel like they connect with you better. They're going to respect you more because you're able to communicate with them in the way they want to be communicated with. So I'm going to talk just for a little bit about the DISC assessment. So there's a lot of DISC assessments out there. The one that we have this is the Maxwell method of DISC. It shows 3 different styles. It shows how others see you. So when you filled out your, people-oriented versus task-oriented and what you think you are, there's another you that people see you as. That a lot of times that's where that's your public self, your mask is. And that's how you show up, like, for instance, in the work environment. And people who don't know you really, really, really well, that's who they see. And so it's always really good to see, well, how am I coming across to other people? And then you've got your core, which is who you really are at your core. But that also is what comes out under stress. So like in a stressful environment or a stressful situation, that's what comes out. For instance, this is what this looks like. So one of my clients, he's interviewing now, and he is a very high ID. And in his last interview that he had, he said, I'm really shocked I didn't get the job. I was qualified. I felt like I answered the questions really well. And so in finding out more about what went on in the interview he is that even higher I, who he is at his core, and than he is in a regular environment. And so what happened is he was really trying to sell himself, and he was trying to be, you know, Mr. Personality and Mr. Relational, and getting off the subject and wanting to kind of take control of the situation. And so it helped him to see, okay, that's one of my blind spots of who I am under stress. Because in lots of times in an interview, we're under that stress. And then there's the mirror, which is how you see yourself. So here's an example of like the 3 different graphs and the way that the person looks in the 3 different areas. So that first graph is their public self, their mask. The middle one is who they are at their core and what comes out under stress. And then the third graph is how they see themselves. So DISC will tell you a lot of stuff. It tells you not only your strengths and challenges, but it'll tell you your communication do's and don'ts, the value you bring to a team, your personal growth areas, how to communicate with different styles, and then also your leadership strengths as well. So I'm going to go to questions, but I want to go ahead and leave this up here, and I'm going to type in chat a link if you want to connect with me. I send out a confidence communication e-newsletter, and I know some of y'all signed up for it last time. And my next one is going to be about how to leave a lasting positive impression. You know, a lot of us talk about first impressions, but I'm going to be talking about how to leave a conversation with someone the very first time. How do you leave with making a lasting positive impression? Also check out my YouTube channel. I've got YouTube videos on confidence and a lot with introverts as well. And if you're interested in taking a DISC assessment, I can send you a key code and meet with you and go over your report. It's a 30-page report. I can go over that with you, and it's also got a personal action plan for you to be able to say, okay, with this information, now I've got this awareness, what do I want to do with this? And it'll show that you the blend of your different styles. And so it'll be really helpful for you. And then I also do virtual interview coaching as well. And so if you're interested in that, I will go ahead and type into chat the link if you want to take advantage of any of those things. I'll go ahead and type that in now. And okay, type that in. It's a form. It's a Google form. Let me go ahead and hear from you all. Questions, thoughts?
We have 3 questions. One says, do you recommend advertising our DISC type on LinkedIn and resumes, assuming that we're applying to positions that are appropriate to our type?
Great question. I would say no. And here's the reason why I would say no is some people think that they understand DISC, you know, like maybe they've taken it years ago and they really don't remember. And then a lot of times, like I said, you're a blend of different styles, and it's not a whole total package of who you are. So here's an example. My style is a CS, which means I'm task oriented, but my other dominant style is that S, that reserved people oriented style. But in certain situations, I also have that I style, which is that outgoing people oriented style. And so if people just see me as a CS, they may make judgments about me. But a lot of it depends on the intensity of your style. It depends on your past experiences. It depends on your background, as far as, you know, your background with your employment history. And then a lot of it is, what does the job require? So like, for instance, I could be in a job where I could give presentations, but if I said, hey, I'm a CS style and I was applying for a job where it required me to do public speaking, they would probably say, oh, okay, well, this person is a CS, so they're reserved, so they're not going to feel comfortable giving presentations. So great questions, but you don't want people to just make that, just like I said, as far as this is not going to be 100% right with people, but it'll help you. You don't want to just put your style out there and have people make judgments about you that could likely be very incorrect.
Somebody also asked if you could possibly go back and show those 3 slides, the 3 slides ago. So 3 slides from the end, I think, where you're talking about.
It was Kathy, it was the one with the giant chart, colored cube with the.
Where it talks about the 3, how you see yourself and how
No,
others
the
see
one
you.
the one before that, I think, with the big colorful on the right, the big colorful graph, and then on the left it was DISC assessment report. Not that, well, I think
This
it was
one?
no, the one that has the red D and the yellow I in the square and the green S.
Right here.
No, it's the big chart.
Go before that one. Can you
Yeah,
do the
maybe
one
it's
before
right.
before this one?
Let's see what's before it. It was a great slide, but I didn't get the last 2 bullet points on the left side of. I can put it. Can I show you on the camera?
Yes.
It was that. Did you see it?
Let
That
me
one?
go back to gallery view.
Oh, sorry. It was that one.
Oh, yeah, I was there. Okay.
Thank you. I wanted to get everything you wrote on that, and you did the last bullet and changed it. So.
Okay, sorry.
No problem. I'm just really into this. So
Yeah, let me go to that slide real quick.
Awesome. By the way, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this, Antoinette.
Okay, you're probably talking about this one.
Right. Okay, so that's all the bullets on the left. And then I'm going to snap that picture, and I got it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. And then I have another question.
Okay.
Let's see, 3 slides ago. So we had a speaker who's rather he's absolutely whatever the first one was, where he's a take charge, a somewhat domineering, confident guy. And one of his pieces of advice to job seekers is, he said, you should take over the interview. And at the very beginning of the interview, it's sometimes even before they've asked any questions, say, before we get started, I'd like to ask a couple questions, if that's okay. And then one of the questions is what I think is the most significant question that he recommends, is that you say, what is the business problem that you want the person who gets this job to solve? And so it kind of gets to the core of, why am I here? And sometimes I can see that whole interview diverging from the planned questions and going into a kind of a high level conversation about the strategic impact of the job and so forth. And I have done a different kind of personality assessment, where it said that people that are that take charge personality like other people who are that same personality, but that other people do not necessarily like that take charge personality. So if they're a more reserved one, they're going to look on that as this person is overbearing and domineering and not a team player.
You are exactly right, Kathy. You're right. Because think about it. If you're that I or S or C style, then you're going to go, oh my gosh, what is the, What is this person? Unless you're hiring somebody that you're like, wanting to be this bulldog and you're going, oh, wow, this person's a bulldog, But I think still, even in that situation, it would be kind of abrupt and overbearing to the interviewer. So even though you might be showing confidence in that situation and take chargeness, still this team has to work with you, and they may go, oh my gosh, this person's going to be great at sales or great at, going and getting business, but what's it going to be like working with this person? So yeah, I think that comes into play of, your if he's that way, then he's thinking about that's the way that he would like for somebody to take charge in an interview. But somebody who's not that style, it would be considered overbearing.
Yeah, and that's of course is the big unknown, is you don't really know exactly what kind of personality the other people have.
Exactly. Yeah. And so
You're working off limited little clues.
you are. And so you don't want to go extreme in any one way, but still you have more clues than when you started. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
is great. So you got more clues than when you first started. So it's never going to be 100%. I'm surprised because sometimes all of my clients, I always give them a DISC assessment. And sometimes I will predict what I think they're going to be. I've had a meeting with them and then I've given them the assessment. And so I always like to predict, and I've spent an hour with them. And sometimes I'm still shocked at going, oh, okay, I was wrong. Or they may have that style I guessed, but then they're that blend of the different styles.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that people's situation, like when they're unemployed and so they're scared, or as you said, under stress, or they have lost some confidence, they're sort of in an atypical stage in their life, and so it might impact their personality. Do you find that when they're in an awkward situation like that their personality type changes or not?
Yeah, so with the 3 graphs that we have, the one that's more likely to change is the mask, which is the way that they're perceived by others. So that's the one that changes the most depending on the situation and depending on the job. So like, say, for instance, I got a job where I had to be more like my D is very low in all across the board. But if I got to a job where I had to be that take charge dominant person, then likely my D would end up becoming higher over time because I was stepping into the role. But to answer your question, the first graph is the one that's more likely to change. But we also have to remember that in those stressful situations, so like, for instance, oh my gosh, I'm stressed out. I've got this deadline to get a job. I haven't gotten an offer yet. Then what happens is those different levels of what's high in the middle graph is what shows up when we're under stress. So like, for instance, if a C, the C style really showed up in that middle graph and it was really high, then that means like in a stressful situations, we tend to go down and be like over analytical and really, really, really get into details.
Have you, in the one that I used to teach, it always seemed as though when people are promoted or when they become parents, so then they're in a leadership role in both cases, that their personality, I guess it would be the outward looking one, becomes more, is it D, becomes more domineering, a little bit more take charge, because now you're in charge of other people.
Yeah, so that would be like the first graph you're stepping into that role. So if it's something that you're not, it's not your natural core, but you're stepping into the role, meaning, okay, this is required of me now. So I'm starting to exude more of this behavior on an outward basis.
And when
Like
the
some
kids-
people
when
are
the kids
very,
leave,
what's
I'm
that?
sorry. You first.
Some people are very chatty at work and very outgoing. And then in the home environment or who they are at their core, they're a lot less of that I. They're maybe more quiet, or just the opposite. Some people are very quiet at work and, people only see that task-oriented side of them, but yet who they are at their core, their friends and family are going, oh my gosh, they're so conversational and they're so friendly, when they are not that way in the office environment or the public
I
environment.
think that's more common. And then
Yeah.
once the kids leave home, then you can resume your craziness.
Ha,
And somebody has said, what is the right response when you're in a diverse interview group? So you have a lot of interviewers and they're all different personality types, and how should you?
Yeah, and so I would say in that situation, you don't want to go to the extreme in any one area. But kind of like Bethany's advice earlier on up in the chat, when you've got a group of different people, if you can tell that somebody's, wanting those quick answers, they're very that D style, then, you're answering at a high level. But if you've got this other person, who's part of the interview process, who's wanting to ask you these detailed questions, then getting into the details. But a lot of it too is knowing who's going to be making the decision, right? Are they making the decision as a group, or, is just the D person making the decision? And a lot of times we don't know that.